My name is Stasy, two-time surrogate. One of the main reasons that made me look into surrogacy in the first place was my mom. When I was a junior in high school, my parents decided they wanted to try for a child on their own. My stepdad did not have any children and never thought he wanted them. And then went to my mom in her early 40s and said he wanted a baby. And going through that process with my mom, going through IVF and not being successful in having another child. And so I knew in some capacity I wanted to help another family. I first went to my husband and let him know what I was thinking of doing. And his only concern with it was what my heart was going to be like when it was all over. Then my next step was going to my children. They had to understand and fully know that this was not a brother or sister that was going to be given away, but that this was a baby I was carrying to help another family. And my daughter immediately jumped up and said, "Mommy, that's amazing." My kids came with me to surrogacy agency along with my husband, and they asked me questions. They involved my kids in the interview. My husband made sure everybody was on the same page, that I wasn't going forward with something that my family wasn't in full support of. The process going forward from there was submitting my medical records, psychological evaluation, having a home visit with a social worker where they were able to see my home, my children, and kind of my life in action. Once the medical screening was complete, I was able to have my profile of myself and my family go out to intended parents to kind of review and see if there was a good match. Early on, I was able to say that I was open to working with an international family. And so when I got my first profile sent to me, the family was from Tel Aviv, Israel, and I was so excited to be able to work with someone from a completely different part of the world that I've never been to, didn't know much about, and I was excited to see what that kind of dynamic of a relationship could be like. I will never forget the day I got my first email, the only email of my first journey, where I read it and immediately knew that that was a couple that I would like to sit down and meet. My husband and I went to the surrogacy agency and we Skyped in with them. They had somebody there to ask questions if there was kind of a lull in the conversation, keep it going, and feel really good about being able to make that decision to move forward or not. Both my match meetings, we decided that we would move forward shortly after the match meeting. My husband and I were sitting in the office, and just as we were telling them we would like to move forward onto the next steps, her email dinged and got the same response from my intended parents as well. We were ready to move forward onto the next steps. Leading up to the embryo transfer, I had lots of appointments at ORM and just getting my body ready for the transfer. The box of medications is huge. We had one embryo transfer and transferred 2 embryos and got pregnant with boy-girl twins. And technology is amazing in the sense where the day of the transfer and then the remainder of our journey and even up until today, our communication has been in all sorts of ways. We would email, we would use WhatsApp, we would video chat. I did my very best to ensure that my intended parents were able to be there for every appointment. Both my intended parents, they arrived about 3 weeks before the delivery date. And the twins came a bit early. Mom was here first. Dad stayed back. My water broke a week after she arrived. That was a surprise, but I was able to have my husband in the room, and his hand was in my left hand and Mom's hand was in my right hand, and just looking up and watching her peek over that curtain and see her babies and meet them for the first time was something I could have never even imagined. They were able to have a room in the hospital right next to me, and babies went straight to Mom and Dad after the delivery and had their own room. When I decided to go into a second journey, I knew I wanted to help a same-sex couple. The difference between that transfer and my second journey is we had a first transferring 2 embryos, and getting pregnant, and then later having a miscarriage. We took about 6 months off, and I was able to travel to Israel and visit my first set of intended parents and be there for the twins' birthday, and then also be able to spend some time with my intended dads and kind of just take a break and reset. And like I said, 6 months later, we were ready, and I was healthy and mentally healthy to be able to move forward into a second transfer. And we transferred 2 embryos, and we're pregnant with twins. And around the 10-week ultrasound, we found out that one had not continued to grow. I can tell you now that as hard as that was for them and for our journey, it ended up allowing us to grow closer together. And you ask them now, they tell me every time that they would not have it any other way, because then they wouldn't have their little girl. Everything happened just the way it was supposed to. Throughout the pregnancy, like I said, we would Skype in for appointments, but I think during that time, I'd send belly pictures and give them updates and let them know what my day was like. But even more than that, they were really excited to know what was going on in my family and with my kids. And I really appreciated that about that relationship grew to be so much more than just a surrogate to an intended parent, but true friendship was built along the way. And it made the anticipation for their arrival for the delivery that much more exciting. We counted down the days. I think that day that I had been anticipating and waiting for from the time I decided to be a surrogate and have them in the room and watch the delivery of their baby. My husband was there, and dads were in there, and they were able to walk with me through the halls and be a big part of that laboring and delivery process, and taking good care of me and making sure I was comfortable and had everything I needed. They stood back here and were able to watch baby be born, and I will never forget the moment where my doctor pulls baby out and just holds her up to her daddy's, and seeing the look on their face, that's what I had been waiting for this whole time. It was beautiful and amazing. I went to the airport to say farewell and bid them their very best as they bring their babies home. It wasn't the fact of seeing the baby leave that I struggled with. It was the thought of knowing that daily interaction wasn't going to be there anymore, which it shouldn't be. They're new parents. They needed to go home and get situated, and that process is one that you just kind of have to feel out. It was kind of the close of one chapter and the beginning of a new chapter. And I can say now, having been a couple years since the transfers, I love the dynamic of our relationship and what it is now. We have plans to go back to Israel. They have plans to come back to Portland. We get pictures. I send pictures. That it's more of a distant friendship than the focus of the surrogacy. Once we see each other again over video chat, it's like no time is lost, and I love that. I'm told all the time, what an amazing thing you have done for someone. But one thing that I got from this that I never dreamed I would ever get from it is what my children have been able to learn from this experience. They now have been able to see a kind of love I could have never taught them. Their dreams are just have no limits. And I think that surrogacy was something that has opened their hearts and their minds to bigger possibilities. And for that, I'll be forever grateful. Your journey's not going to look just like mine, but it's going to be beautiful because it will be your own.